Something unthinkable has just happened in your neighborhood. There was an earthquake or a flood. You've just had a tornado hit or a hurricane is on the way. You have to evacuate, and you don't know when or if you will return. What about a biological event like the avian bird flu, or even a nuclear accident? What do? How do you survive until the authorities come, and when will they come? Welcome to the Emergency Preparation and Cooking Show, designed to teach everyone what their choices are and how to buy and actually use the right equipment. A show that provides you hands-on experiences by cooking delicious, nutritious meals using canned goods, dehydrated foods, sprouting seeds, and gardening seeds. With step-by-step demonstrations on how to have a positive adventure during disastrous times versus a life-threatening survival of the fittest experience. It's now your choice. Knowledge truly is power. So here to take the mystery and trepidation out of being prepared is the host and creator of the show, Reg McDaniel Jr.
Hi, I'm Reg McDaniel and welcome to the Emergency Preparation and Cooking Show. In the next several weeks, you're going to learn about how to create a food storage, what kind of food storage you need. We're going to bust a lot of the myths about food storage. I'm going to take the fear and trepidation out of the mystery of being prepared for an emergency. And we're going to have a lot of fun. We're even going to have a cookbook contest where you can submit your recipe for home cooking with food storage, and we'll put that into a recipe book. We'll have cash prizes, food storage prizes, and you want to participate in that. Now, one of the things you need to know about food storage is one size does not fit all. And there isn't just one kind of food storage. When people think of food storage, they think of dehydrated stuff. Well, that's not the case. There are 5 different kinds of food storage. For instance, if you look here, we have canned goods that you're familiar with in case lot sales. So you have your canned chicken, your canned tuna fish, Spam, luncheon meat, smoked oysters. Those are good sources of protein. This is actually canned bacon that's in wax paper in a can made in Denmark. We have your typical cream of chicken, cream of mushroom, green beans, corn, and pineapple. All canned goods with liquid in there that have been processed. Those are canned goods. You have case lot sales, so that's just one kind of food storage. Second kind of food storage you're familiar with is the dehydrated and flash freeze dried that I talked about. The difference between dehydrated is it's been air dried. Flash freeze dried means it's been dried very quickly. Most of the nutritional value is still present, has just as long of a shelf life, but it gives you a little more variety. The next kind we have is your seeds like you're going to sprout, like lentils or peas. You can sprout alfalfa. So sprouting is another kind of food storage item. Then you have your grains such as wheat, like kamut, spelt, amaranth. You can grind those into flour and use them for your bread, for your cereal, for your pancakes, waffles, things of that nature. These are lentils. You can sprout these or you can use them in soups. So those are the 5 different kinds of food storage, and if you really want to be wise, you want to have a little bit of all 5 in your food storage, not just one or just the other or just the other, which is what a big mistake that a lot of people make. Now, during the next several weeks, as I said, we're going to show you how to cook with food storage so that it tastes like healthy fast food at McDonald's or Pizza Hut or one of those other 5 food groups that you all know about that the kids love. And my guest today is Vicki Tate, and she compiled a book called Cooking with Home Storage, and she's going to talk a little about her experiences in food storage, and we're going to bring her up here in just a second. And she's also one of my main fulfillment centers for many of the products that we think you might want to choose to have to be prepared. And we're going to also talk about cookbooks. When you're making a food storage, you need to figure out 60 minimum, well, we'll say 90 minimum recipes, because you have breakfast every day for 30 days, lunch every day for 30 days, and dinner every day for 30 days. And that's 90 recipes if you do a different one every single day. You can go to 180 recipes. Where are you going to get all these recipes? We'll get a few of them from the show, because it's called the Emergency Preparation and Cooking Show. So the first part of the show, we show you equipment and emergency preparation devices. In the latter part of the show, we show you how to cook with food storage. So you can get books, which we're going to show you that we endorse, and we have many of the authors of these books that are going to be on our show, such as Vicki today. And then, of course, going to our website, you'll get other recipes, and then eventually the viewers will be submitting their own recipes in our home cookbook contest. Howdy, I'm Reg McDaniel, host and creator of the Emergency Preparation and Cooking Show. My two friends here today are going to talk about the emergency bucket they have. One of the things I really like about it is the nutrition and the simplicity of all you do is add water. That's all you need. No special cooking skills, special survival skills, just water. So go ahead, take it away, guys.
As Reg mentioned, he's mostly focused on the food, but there's other aspects to the bucket. Okay, at Food for Health, we prepared several products for you in the event of an emergency. If you've seen our clip here on the show, you know that we survived for 6 days living just out of this bucket. So Derek, tell us what's inside the kit.
Quite simple. Enough supplies for 2 people, 2 strapping young guys like us for 6 days. We've got water filtration, most important item. We've got food, enough for 2 people, 6 days. We even have the pot to cook it in. We've got a great fuel source here which can be used indoor or outdoor. It's non-toxic and it boils 2 quarts of water in less than 14 minutes.
What about the flashlight? Tell them about the flashlight.
The flashlight's really cool as well.
Don't forget the flashlight.
I love the flashlight. The flashlight will charge the cell phone. That's the most important part. But it is a crank, so you can crank it to get your power, so you can get your light. But more importantly, it's got the radio with it too, so you can always stay in touch. We've got waterproof matches, windproof and waterproof. So if it's windy, you can still light the fire. We got the first aid kit. We've got 2 masks. We've got emergency blankets, which are my favorite. We've got the whistle, we've got the Leatherman tool, and then you've got a bucket, which is really good to sit on if you're tired.
And a whistle. Stranded, abandoned, kidnapped, who knows? You need this emergency kit to survive for 6 days.
2 people!
6 days!
2 people!
And the shipping is always free! I'm Jeff Power, and this is Derek Christensen. And we survived in New Orleans for 6 days out of this survival bucket. You can get yours at EasySurvivalSolutions.com. Go to Reg McDaniel's site, and you can purchase your very own emergency supply kit. And as always, the shipping is free
if you put in TV show in the code.
Again, the coupon code for this emergency kit is
TV
show. And we're going to say it one more time in case you were chewing on cornflakes. The coupon code is TV show.
So without further ado, let's bring up our guest today, Vicki Tate. Come on up, Vicki.
Oh, hi, Reg.
Thanks for being here today.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Now, Vicki is the one who kind of gave me the idea, the aspiration to start this show. I met her at an emergency preparation booth many months ago and called her up one day and said, you know, you didn't mean to, but you gave me this great idea to have this show. And so I wanted to have her on my first show because she's the reason that I thought of the show and was able to copyright it and things of that nature. So Vicki, why don't you tell us some of your experiences, and we've got a real nice premium food storage here you're going to tell us about, but go ahead and tell us some of the things you think our viewers need to know about having a home food storage program.
Okay, well, I guess maybe the first thing we ought to think about is why would a person want to have one? Mm-hmm. I think anyone who's tuned in here probably has an interest in it, but I think there's a lot of reasons, and please add to whatever I'm going to say, Reg.
Oh, I will.
But
I'm not hesitant.
I think there's a lot of reasons that people ought to consider it, and maybe one of the first things we ought to think about are just a lot of the things that we see go on in the country. Just today, they're having a lot of flooding back along the East Coast and in the Northwest, and we see things happen all the time, where it's just really advantageous for people to have some things on hand because they don't know what they might run into just in the near future, even for a short period of time.
Well, along those lines of thought, just recently we've had tornadoes in the Midwest. A year ago, a little over a year ago, we had Hurricane Katrina that everybody knows about. And over in the eastern country, we had the earthquake, and then we had the tsunami. So there's all kinds of catastrophes going on, and these catastrophes have accelerated in the frequency that they're occurring.
They really have. And what I've seen through the years is that people think that the government's going to be there to help them. And what we see on TV gives that impression on the news, like with Katrina, that they will just take care of everything. But after Katrina, they even said it would be impossible for them to have to do this on any extended basis very often in those times when you need some help.
Yeah, like if you get laid off for a job or injured because of an accident so you can't work, things of that nature.
Yeah.
So it doesn't
A lot
have to
of
be a
different-
catastrophe.
Right.
That is a catastrophe, just a different kind of catastrophe.
That's right.
Okay. Well, one of the things you were saying is you thought it was really important that when they have a food storage, they don't have to do a lot of cooking.
Yeah, I think one thing, let me just say, Rich, is as I started doing a lot of, well, for years I had been involved in preparedness and helping people try to figure out how to do it. And one of the problems that I saw is people would get their food, but they didn't have a clue what to do with what
it.
they had stored.
Yeah.
And I like to tell a story. I was in charge of a church group cannery, and we had it was very, very well participated in, but people would come in and they would not have any idea what to do with even the basics that they were storing. And one day I had a friend come up to me and say, Vicki, I decided that I needed to save some money and I wanted to use my food storage. And I went down in my basement and I looked in rows and rows of cans, but there was nothing to eat. And it really can strike you that way, because if you are not used to cooking with those types of things, and nowadays a lot of people don't do much cooking anyway, you need to know what you're doing. But bottom line, there are going to be times, even for people who are the world's best cooks, if you are in a situation that is a stressful situation, you are not going to be able to do that kind of cooking all the time. Because when you get into things like your grains and your beans, you can spend hours preparing some of those things. And if you are under stress, if you're not feeling well, a lot of different reasons for it, you're not going to be able to do that. And so it's a really, really good idea to have some foods that do not require a lot of cooking that you can fall back on
So
in
the
those
bottom
times.
line you're saying is, if you're in a stressful situation, that's not the time to all of a sudden learn how to use this stuff.
Oh, that is so true. And I tell people all the time, anything that you are going to have to use in an emergency, learn how to use it now, because you are not going to be wanting to deal with that then. And it
Right.
needs to be something that you're familiar with. Some of the foods that would be really helpful for people to have on hand that don't require a lot of cooking would be things like your soups or chilies, some of your canned meats. Tuna fish is a really good one. One of my absolute favorites is the Alpine Air
And I
freeze-dried
want you to
food.
talk about this particular line. This is like a gourmet
It is.
food storage program, isn't it?
It is, and yet even though we might say it's a gourmet food storage program, it is something that once you're a little ways into your food storage, you might be wise to add a little bit of this anyway, because Alpine Air, and on here it says Gourmet Reserves, it's Alpine Air Gourmet Reserves. This is the brand that they use for long-term storage, and it will normally store 7 to 10 years.
Let's talk just for a moment. Why is it 7 to 10 years? And there is a reason.
Yes, and this is one of the real pluses of Alpine Air foods, and that is that they don't put chemicals and preservatives in their foods. And so it may not store quite as long as some of the other freeze-dried foods, but you are much better off.
Nutritionally and
Yes.
taste-wise.
Yes, and a lot of people, if they get into eating this type of thing on a daily basis, are going to find that they don't do really well putting a lot of those types of preservatives into their body day after day after day. And so it's really good to have some things, especially if you have a low tolerance for it. You're going to need to go more towards this. And some of the other companies out there have got a lot of things in it that I really wouldn't want to be storing myself.
Well, let me
But-
explain the second reason briefly why it's 7 to 10 years. If you take any food storage product from any company and you store it out in a tough shed type apparatus in your backyard where it's constantly exposed with no insulation to hot and cold, hot temperatures in the summer, cold in the winter, it's not going to last near as long as if you have it stored in your house. Like in a closet or under a bed where it's temperature controlled in your house, which is going to give it a lot longer shelf life. Then if you're fortunate enough, as a few people are like myself, to have a fruit room type, root cellar type room, that's really cool throughout the entire year, it's going to last the full 10 years or more. And so that's the second reason why it's 7 to 10 years. Depends on how you store it and where you store it and the conditions it's stored in.
Yes. Now, one thing that I will say, when you get into your regular dehydrated foods, generally those are going to store a little bit longer if they're your fruits and vegetables and things. But one of the things that people need to remember is anything that has a lot of oils in it, you're going to have a 7 to 10 year shelf life on, no matter what it is.
Right.
And particularly your dairy products.
Right, and one of the myths we want to break up is that you don't want to be buying products that are like waffle mix in a number 10 can. This is a number 10 can. This is a number 5 can, which is half the size of a number 10 can, same diameter. But you don't want to be buying waffle mix and Belgian waffle mix and pancake mix in these number 10 cans, because you can make that yourself and it's taking up valuable space that it shouldn't be taking up, and it has a shorter lifespan having those products because there are oils in those products. So you want to make those, learn how to make those on your own using a wheat grinder, whether it's manual or electric, if you have electricity and use of that, which we'll talk about in other shows. Go ahead.
That's a cheaper way to do it, and you have better nutrition doing it that way. But actually, I don't mind having a few of those things in mine, but I just have to keep in mind that I have about a 2-year shelf life with those
And
ready mixed things.
Canned goods like this are only lasting 2 to 3 years,
Yes.
ideally, whereas the other things last a lot longer.
Yes. But back to what I think you wanted me to mention as far as quick to prepare foods. As far as this goes, one of the things that Alpine Air is so famous for is their main dishes. They are absolutely delicious. They're what people are used to eating, the taste that they're used to, and they don't require any cooking. You add water, let them sit for 10 to 15 minutes, and it's ready to eat.
Okay.
And
And that's
that
really unique.
it is unique, but it is also absolutely a wonderful thing to have in your food storage for those times when you cannot be cooking
Right.
or don't want to be cooking.
Right. Got other things to do, whatever
Yes.
they are. Okay. Well, if you want to get a hold of this particular brand, up on our screen right now is Vicky's number. Now, if you were to call the factory direct, you'd be paying more for this product than if you were to call Vicky, our distributor. And you would want to use the code word TV show so that she knows you saw us on the TV show to get the discount, versus calling the factory direct where you'll pay full price. So if you want to save some money, use that code word TV show. Okay. Well, thank you for showing this part. Now, for our second section, we're going to take this away and we're going to go over some of the books that our viewers really need to seriously consider having for these recipes I was talking about and other things, okay?
Okay.
So we'll be right back and we'll have a new set to show you, and thank you for watching so far.
Do you feel a need for more food storage but don't have the usual $2,000 or $3,000 to get it? Do you have the basic foods for survival but want more variety, nutrition, and selection? For a very limited time, you can have 1 year's supply of gourmet food storage delivered to your door for just $500 down and a low monthly payment for the balance. That means you can get all this food now and pay for it in affordable budgeted payments. Call Cooking with Home Storage for the details at 435-835-8283. That's 435-835-8283. Pay $500 now, get the 1 year food supply right now, and make affordable monthly payments for more peace of mind. That's 435-835-8283.
Hi, welcome back to the Emergency Preparation Cooking Show. I'm Reg McDaniel, and my guest today is Vicki Tate. And we want to tell you briefly, before we go into these books, how we got into the emergency preparation and food storage experience. I myself have 3 college degrees, but that didn't keep me from getting laid off from my job several times, different areas of work that I did. And having 4 young children, I just didn't want to be a victim of circumstance in the economics. So I started at the very beginning of our marriage 28 years ago to learn how to do bottling and canning and starting my own food storage. So we've always had that for many, many years. And in this day and age, we need it so much that I decided to do this show so that people can learn with hands-on experience through viewing this what your choices are, that you have lots of choices, and you can choose what's best for you. Vicki, how did you get involved in the food storage part?
Well, actually, I grew up on a ranch out in Nevada, and it just kind of was a way of life to be self-sufficient. And so when my husband and I got married 28 years ago, that was one of the things that we first started doing, just because we realized the importance of doing it. And I started looking around and noticing that so few of my neighbors had anything that it was easier for me to try to motivate them than think of trying to take care of them. And I've had the experience of going through several disasters of a kind, and I just have seen the importance of having this type of thing on hand. And that's one of the reasons why I personally have been so committed to it, because I've seen the need for it, I've had to have it, and I just think it's a very prudent lifestyle, not to mention that it saves a person a lot of money if they do it and do it well.
One of the things people need to also realize, and this has happened to me in the younger years when we were first married, is sometimes you can't pay your bills and your water gets turned off, or your electricity gets turned off, or your gas gets turned off, your phone gets turned off, just because you didn't have the money on time. And so in those situations, you surely don't want to starve to death when things are bad enough with no electricity or something like that. Now, as I mentioned earlier in our show, Vicki compiled the book Cooking with Home Storage, and you can get all the books we're about to talk about by calling her number or going to her website if she has one. Do you have a website? You do, don't you, or don't you?
I put it up and I took it back down,
Okay.
but I guess I will have to.
Okay. Anyway, so I want the viewers to know that I've already purchased all these books before I ever thought of doing this TV show. Some of them I already had before I even met Vicki, and some of them she had, and I bought from her when I first met her at her emergency preparation booth. So why don't we start with the one you want to start with first, and let's talk about them.
Well, let's talk about this one, because that kind of goes into what you asked me, how did I get involved? And really how I got involved in what I do now is because of this book. I was already helping people get prepared, but as I mentioned, I saw that so few people knew what they were doing, and there was not a good food storage cookbook out there that was available that was really very comprehensive. And so as I thought about it, I realized that if I really wanted to make a difference for people, the best thing I could do would be to put together a book that really addressed how to use the things that people were storing. And so I started talking to friends and people that I knew and collecting their favorite recipes and using a lot of my family heirloom recipes that have gone into this book. And one day I was sitting in a meeting that was actually a history meeting, and it hit me, if I really wanted to make this interesting, go back and look at how the pioneers did things, because how they lived is it was just their normal way of life is what we do with our food storage. And so I did that. I went back and started studying the history of it and collecting a lot of old pioneer recipes, which are absolutely invaluable because they use such basic ingredients and they are very easy to do. They don't take very long to do. And then started putting this together, and throughout the book there, wherever you see one of these little boxes, there's history on how the pioneers did different things. And that's one of the things that people have found particularly fascinating with this book. I have people tell me all the time they read it cover to cover over and over because
I read
they
it cover
love
to
it.
cover when I got it. I did, literally. I couldn't wait.
So what I tried to do, because I've been so involved in this, I had a good idea of what people needed to know how to do. And so it goes through everything that you basically would have in your food storage. What do you do with it? What are some recipes there? And then in addition to all of that, there's even a little bit on Dutch oven cooking. A lot of the things that we'll talk about here, there's some of that in here. But then you get back to grandma's home remedies, things that you can do health-wise that you might have on hand. Natural beauty and personal care, emergency baby supplies,
Household
survival
cleaners.
foods. Yeah, I've just tried to make it absolutely, totally comprehensive. And then in the back, there's a list of what should a person store, How much should they store? How do you reconstitute all of this? Substitutions that you can use if you don't have things. How to turn any recipe that uses white flour into using wheat, sugar into using honey, that type of thing. So it's just a really, really comprehensive book. And what I have always suggested to people is one of the best things that they could possibly do in getting prepared is get a hold of a good cookbook, whether it be this one or another one, and go through it and identify what are the things that your family would eat. Because you're going to find there are so many things in here that is just normal eating for people. In fact, I have people tell me all the time that this they use more in their everyday life than any other book they've got.
Okay.
And go through and look at the ingredients and notice what you're going to need to have, because there are all kinds of things that people do not think to put into their food storage that are just absolutely basic essential items.
Okay.
And
Let's
can
go
I
to the next one.
Okay, can I just mention one? Oh,
Sure.
okay, one thing. If you're getting your basic food storage, there are 4 flavorings that are really important for people to get. That's bouillon, cheese, tomato product, and onions, and then spices, because you use that all of the time.
Right.
And
That's what gives you
baking powder,
variety.
yes, if you don't have those, you are so limited in what you can do. If you've got it, you can do all kinds of things. Baking powder, baking soda, oil, yeast, you just have to have them. The 2 books that I find absolutely essential that I think every single person ought to have is the Cooking with Home Storage and the Sense of Survival book.
Now let me say something about the Sense of Survival, because you won't have to say much about this book.
Right.
I've known Alan South for many years and talked to him personally, and he agreed to be on the show. So we're going to talk about this book in great depth with the author, and he's going to tell us exactly how he wrote it, why he wrote it. And so we don't need to cover this one, but it is a book you need to get, The Sense of Survival by J. Alan South.
Yeah, I just want to say one thing about that. The reason I recommend that, and I know Alan really, really well also, and I think it took him 3 years to compile this book. But what I recommend is people read it, put it with their emergency supplies, because it covers
Well, it's like a Boy
so
Scout
much.
handbook.
It really
real
is.
detailed information on everything.
And I have done tons of preparedness expos, different places, and I've had survivalists, military people come through, and I have had the comment so often that they have never seen a better book that is
Right.
as comprehensive in one volume as
And
that
that's
book.
why I got the author on our show, because
Yes.
it's that good. Okay.
And that, between the 2, that's exactly what you've got here, is this one is totally comprehensive, and is this one.
Right.
And so if you can only afford 2 books, those are the 2 that I would get first.
And I'll second that, because I've read every book you're about to see, and it's really true.
Then there are 2 others that would be next on my list. Particularly this Country Bean book, and the reason that I really like that, Rita, I think you're going to have Rita.
Yes, she's
On
agreed to
also.
be on the show also.
And Rita and her aunt, Liarda Moulton, have done just amazing things with preparedness, with food storage for years and years and years. I know them, they're both friends of mine, and they've just done wonderful things. But this book I particularly like because everybody stores beans. It's a great item to have. If you want to save money, if you want to do your food storage inexpensively, do a lot with grains and beans.
And there's a lot of beans to choose from.
There
So,
are.
a variety.
Yes, and you need to have that variety. That's so important in your food storage to get the variety.
It's also a high source of protein.
And so it's really a good idea to have a book that deals with that. But one of the things I like the most about Rita's book, and she laughed when I told her this, but one of the reasons that I recommend this to people is because after you have stored your beans for a while, they get hard. They've lost an enzyme. And you can cook them for hours. They're hard to use at that point. But there is something that you can still do because they still have their nutrition, and that is grind them into flour. And this is the only book that I know of that has bean flour recipes in it. And it is a great way to use them. Instead of having to cook them for hours, you cook them for 5 minutes. And you can do things like refried beans with it, bean soups and things that take about 5 minutes.
Instead of several hours
Yes.
or soaking overnight.
Yes,
you
and
can
if
do-
you're low on fuel,
That's important.
Yes.
Huge.
So I really, really recommend that book. I really like Liarda's wheat book for the same reason that if you're going to store a lot of wheat, which most people do, it's good to have a book. And Liarda has got some absolutely wonderful recipes in here. But one of my favorite things in her book is her gluten recipe. That is gluten, for those of you who don't know, is part of what is in your wheat. And you grind it up, add some flour, some water to it, let it sit for a few minutes, rinse out the bran, and you're left with this
Pasty.
sticky, almost rubbery stuff that you can make into all kinds of things. Meats that you would not, imitation meat that you would not even know isn't the real thing if you season it right.
Right.
And I know in my book I've got some great recipes for gluten, but Liarda is just superb with that. So that's a really good one. And this is a book that would also be a nice one to add. It's your Mix-A-Meal book. And what it is a book where you take your dehydrated foods, you mix them together, they fit in a number 10 can, and then when you're ready to use them, all you do is add water and bake them. This is a great one for your quick and easy to prepare foods that we were talking about.
It's kind of like when you did the crock pot thing and you put it in the crock pot and cooked all day long. Well, this is like in lieu of the crock pot, which you can't do now. You can put these together and then you're ready to go.
Yeah, but you do it beforehand so that when you want to use it, they're just your quick mixes. It's like what you buy in the store, a mix that's already made up, but you've done it yourself.
Okay.
Okay? Okay. I know that I'm sure that you're going to have a show on alternative ways, how to cook and Dutch ovens.
Right.
This is the best book. And I was mentioning to Reg before we filmed this that in all the years, I've been involved in preparedness for about 25 years. And I have spent years finding the things that I think are the best on the market. I will not carry anything that I do not know is really a good product. And so everything that I do, I have just tried to find the best because what people have is what they're going to be living with.
It's
and
a life or death situation.
It really is. And so with the books, I've done that. With the grain mills, water filters, everything, I've just tried to use my experience.
The Alpine Air food line.
Yes, exactly. I've just used my experience to help people know those things without having to do it themselves. And this is the best book that I have found on Dutch oven cooking. This is really great. It'll tell people how to select their Dutch ovens, how to prepare them so that they can use them.
And once again,
lots of great
if
recipes.
it's in your budget, you can purchase these books from Vicki at her phone number that we showed on our screen earlier. So let's go on to the next one.
All right. These are two books that I find very, very valuable. This is the Where There Is No Doctor book. And we obviously can't thumb through this whole thing here, but if you had this in front of you and went through it, it goes so far beyond a first aid book. It was actually written to go into third world countries where they don't have a lot of medical help. And it will help people identify what's going on with them and how to treat different things. And I know at the expos I have had many, many, many doctors buy this book because they've just been very impressed with how well done it is.
Well, the other thing you need to take into consideration is Katrina is a good example. It took them 3, 4, 5, 7, 10, 12 days before any help arrived. And there's a lot of people that needed medical attention right then and there.
Yes.
And if you had had this and thrown it in your backpack, evacuated, or if you stayed at your home and you had to get on the roof and you had it with you, you'd know what to do.
You would. And if you don't know all of it, you a lot of times will have a nurse or someone
that you can hand it to.
Or that will help them, because the reason the doctors have bought it is because if they're not up on all of this, they don't remember it all.
Right. It's a reference.
So, yeah, it is. But a lot of it we can do ourselves.
Right.
It's just knowing. And so there's the information. And then here's the same thing on Where There Is No Dentist. This one you may not be able to use quite as easily because most of us wouldn't have the equipment, but there is a lot of information in there on taking care of your teeth and doing different things that it's valuable enough that I have included that in what I've done. Now, here's just a few others that I'll just mention. These have just been worth their weight in gold. I have found this Cleansing or Surgery and Simple Health Remedies. These are just little books that someone has put together, a group has put together, that have a lot of cleanses that you can do yourself with just very simple ingredients that can take care of problems so that you end up not having
Well, prevention,
to.
right?
Well, yes, prevention, but also if you have problems, things like there's a kidney cleanse, gallbladder cleanse,
Colon cleanse.
yes, yeah, all of those different things. Lemonade Diet, that's just an excellent little book. And same thing with this, the Simple Health Remedies. It's just got a lot of information on things that you just, a lot of it you have around and things that you can use and do for yourself. This last book, you mentioned to me a minute ago that you knew Dirk. You want to talk about this one?
Yeah, Dirk was a good friend of mine. I actually had him do a class in aromatherapy for a group of mine. And it's called What to Do When Antibiotics Don't Work. I know for a fact Dirk would be on the show in a heartbeat if I asked him. But unfortunately, he passed away about a year ago.
But his wife is still here.
That's right, and she lives in Alabama,
South Carolina.
South Carolina. I knew it was Eastern State. And I still email her to this day. She emails me, and we might fly her in to do a show sometime. But this is an excellent book that he composed based on how to use aromatherapy essential oils and how they do it in France with medical doctors. It's an actual practice that medical doctors in France use. And so if you have the right essential oils, you can do a lot of first aid. And this is a great reference book for that.
Yeah, it's really neat because he tells you how many drops of essential oils to use, how many of this, how many of that,
Right.
to put together into your own formula. And it also has herbs.
Yes.
So,
And herbs are a natural drug, is what they are.
yeah. If you don't have those type of things on hand, this book isn't going to be real valuable to you. But if you do, it's really a good book to have.
Okay.
Here is a unique emergency preparedness item for your consideration. Do you live in a large city, or do you have married children in a large city? Well, check out this incredible portable kitchen, especially fantastic for people who expect to have to get out of town in a hurry. It fits in the back of your truck. It's extremely easy to load. It locks for security purposes. Just look at all these great amenities. It has a double stainless steel sink, 2 separate propane grills, a microwave, a refrigerator, a meal preparation station, and lots of cabinet space. And it folds up into a compact box so you can bug out in a hurry to your next location. This is a limited edition system only. Extremely durable. Only these units are gone. They're gone for good. The suggested retail price from the manufacturer was $69.95, but you can own one for the liquidation price of only $3,500. And that's not all. If you order now, you get all these extra accessories for no additional cost. A double-sided grill with a protective case, 2 grill boxes for the propane stoves, a 5-gallon jug for clean water, a drain kit for the sink, over $500 in free extras for the low price of only $3,500. This is a covert get-out-of-town system, and all your neighbors will think it's simply an awesome tailgate party toy. But this is no toy. So if you don't have to wait for when you leave town for an emergency, you can practice emergency preparedness right now while preparing to be having a tailgate party to everyone else. It goes where you go. Call 801-687-8787 or go to selfpreparedness.com and type in Tailgate Survival System. Do it now before they're all gone.
Howdy everybody, and welcome to the Emergency Preparation and Cooking Show. Today's episode is going to be on a few of the, shall we say, machines that you want to consider investing in. It will be an investment. It's important you get a good quality wheat grinder and a flaker, and that you're aware of the ones that are out there that are only going to last you a short period of time. Now, one of the things that might surprise you is I want to endorse this particular wheat grinder that's an electric wheat grinder made by K-Tech. And the reason is I've had a K-Tech electric wheat grinder for almost 20 years, and the last one I bought finally went out of business about 2 years ago, and so I got a brand new one, their latest model. And it takes a lot of effort, you're going to see, to grind it by hand, and you'll do it in shifts. So when you're going to be practicing in your home, you want to use maybe an electric blender for convenience so that you can get your flour quickly. And then eventually, when there is no electricity, of course, you won't be able to use your electric appliances in any way, shape, or form, your bread makers or whatever. But in the meantime, it's really good, so you won't be discouraged. You don't want to just start doing this kind of thing with a hand grinder and say this is takes too much time. When you're in an emergency crisis, you have all kinds of time on your hands, so don't worry about that, okay? So I'll put this away, and I'm going to bring up my guest who's been on the show before, Miss Vicki Tate, and she's going to explain to us the difference in the quality of wheat grinders we're going to look at and things of that nature. Come on up, Vicki. Thanks for being on our show today.
Oh, thanks, Reg. Thanks for having me again. Yeah, by the way, I have a K-Tech also. And it is nice to have them while you can use them right now. But these are not that hard to use, and they really don't take as much time as you would think. If you have an inexpensive grinder, you are going to be forever grinding, because they will take maybe 20, they generally take about 20 minutes to get 1 cup of flour. And as you mentioned, they don't hold up. And that is one thing that is absolutely essential, is that you have a wheat grinder.
Yeah, there's some really cheap models out there I've seen that are like $50, $75, $100. And if you were to use them every day, you'll find they won't last more than 30 days. And you don't want to find that out if you're in a long-term emergency situation.
Right. You know, I think most of us all started out with those because we didn't know any better. And probably a lot of people watching the program have those, and you just kind of have to stick them away and know that you have it for a short time, but they're not going to hold up. But I would just like to mention why a person should have a grinder.
Okay.
If you have stored a lot of grains in your food storage, you have got to have a way to grind them into flour, because you're not going to be able to use them as whole grains. One thing, they are just way too rough on your system, on your intestines. If you were to use that every day as a whole grain, you would run into some really major problems with that. If you want to store flour and things like that, that's a convenient way to do it. However, flour does not store for very long, and it loses its nutrition very, very quickly. If you can grind your wheat or whatever grain you're planning to grind as you're ready to use it, it's far, far better for you, because within 3 days, all the vitamin E has dissipated out of your grain once it's been ground. And so you want to do it fresh. It tastes better, it's more nutritious, and it will store for many years as opposed to just a couple of years.
Okay. So tell me some of the advantages of this. This is kind of like, this is the one I bought with my own money. The company didn't give this to me. This is my grinder, and proud of it. Okay. So I noticed you have a wheel here, so if you knew how to hook up a bike, you could actually use a bicycle, stationary bike.
That's right, yes. Actually, this is Reg's very own grinder that we're showing here today. And yeah, it comes with the instructions of how to just put a belt on here and hook it up to a stationary bike, and you can just pedal away and grind your flour that way. Very, very easy to do. This particular mill, this is the Country Living Grain Mill, and we've kind of got it slipping around here because it's on the tablecloth. If it wasn't, it's pretty stationary. But yeah, we may need to move this. This is very easy to use. It takes about 1.5 minutes to get a cup of flour.
Okay.
And this, to me, when I first saw this, I knew I had to have this mill because it is such an excellent quality. And just like the K-Tech, it's made here in the U.S., which I think is a nice thing to know. But this is very substantial. You will use this really for a lifetime without having to replace it. I know there are people who have used this mill every day for 20 years, and the only thing they ever have replaced on it is this bolt right there.
Right here.
What you want to keep in mind is you want a mill that is going to last for a long time. It's going to be easy to use. And one of the things that I like about this particular mill is you are able to grind corn and beans with it.
Now there's an attachment for that.
Yes, it's actually this auger right here, and it goes in the shaft right in there, and it breaks those up into smaller pieces before it hits the grinding plates. I noticed you had an extra set of grinding plates over there.
Yes.
Maybe we could just show them what those are.
Yeah, the reason I have an extra set of grinding plates is when you're doing beans, sometimes you have to sort through the beans and make sure there aren't any rocks in the beans. I don't know why rocks get in them, but they do. And if you should mess up and get a rock in there and you're grinding beans, you could very well damage your blades. Let me get my pocket knife.
you're not very likely. I mean, if as long as you're careful and you watch, you
Right.
probably would never have to replace those. But there are a lot of people that like to have an extra set just
Yeah, I'd
to
rather
be on the safe side. Mm-hmm.
than sorry. I may never need them, but I'd rather have them and never
Yeah.
need them.
Because
than not have them.
if you have stored grains and beans, you've got to have a grinder. So you want to have one that's going to keep operating. Okay, these are the grinding plates, and they're extremely finely tooled. They fit together like that, and they just grind your whatever
Beef,
into
or
powder.
whatever. Okay.
The other thing that you want to watch out for with any grinder besides the little rocks is particularly when you've got grinding plates that are this good. Children love to play with these grinders. And when I go to expos, I always have kids that come up and just want to just turn that wheel. And you want to make sure that there is something in there that they are grinding if they're going to do that. Otherwise, you're going to wear those down. So just be aware of those two things anytime you're using your grinders. But this, there are two grain mills that are always ranked #1 when they are looked at and rated. And this and one that's made in Europe always rank at the very, very top of the list. You just don't get a better grain mill than this one.
Well, when I first met you, I had actually researched grain mills, and I had chosen the one I was going to get, but it wasn't this one.
It was
And-
the European one.
Yes, it was, and it was like about $600 more.
Yes.
But I considered it an investment, and then I feel fortunate I found you before I made that investment. And I tried this one and the other one we're going to show them, and I had to have this one, and it was like a third of the cost.
Yes, it
And
was
just as much quality.
They're much less expensive, and we've actually had people who have the European model who have replaced it with this one when they saw it because of some of the features on this as opposed to that one.
Okay.
If a person is going to invest in one of these, because you are talking some money, these run $349, so they're not
As of today's
inexpensive.
taping, it could even go up.
Yeah, that's true, because things are beginning to go up. But there are two things that you ought to make sure if you're going to get one of this quality that you get. One is this power bar. It's an extension right here, and that makes it about 40% easier to turn. But it's much less expensive. It makes it equivalent to a 19-inch flywheel, which would be huge if you did that. And the other thing is the auger. If you're going to get this mill, you definitely want to be able to grind your corn and your beans. Okay, it's always good to have corn in your food storage. It's inexpensive, and there's a lot of things that you could do with it. We're used to eating a lot of corn in our diet. Now, there's a couple of types that you can store. You can store field corn, which is a large kernel, or you can store popcorn. And I like to encourage people to get popcorn in their storage because you can use that as a treat to just pop and eat. But if you grind that into cornmeal, it makes a very, very sweet, delicious cornmeal.
Muffin or bread.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, and corn tortillas, whatever you want to use corn for, there's a lot of ways that you can use it. But as I mentioned, there are very, very, very few grinders that you would be able to grind corn in. This is one of the few.
And the one in Europe, you can't. Can you?
I'm not sure about
Well, if they
that.
want to spend $600, $700 more.
Right.
Okay.
I do know, though, if you're going to do it, you need to make sure you have the auger.
Right, as an accessory.
Mm-hmm. And another thing that you can do with that auger is the beans, as we mentioned. And as we mentioned in one of the other shows that we did, it is really good to be able to grind your beans because after they have stored for a while, they get hard and become nearly impossible to use. But you can grind them into a bean flour and use them to make soups, make them to use them to make refried beans. You can put them in almost any single recipe that you've got. You won't know that they're there, but they add a lot of nutrition. So it's a great way to be able to use your beans that you would think were useless. And if you need to do something quickly, or if you are low on fuel, then that's a really, really good thing to be able to do.
Now we're going to switch to the next in line in wheat grinders, going from the highest down to the next tier. So go ahead and tell us the advantages and disadvantages of that one versus this one.
All right. Now I've spent a lot of years looking at different equipment that is out there, and I've These are the ones that I carry in my own business because I think that they're extremely good mills. This one is the family mill. This one is made in Germany. It's not made here in the U.S. It's made by Xilex, which is an extremely good company. These parts are plastic, but the interior is stainless steel. And so it actually is a very good mill, and I believe it has a 20-year warranty on it. So it's a great mill. But this one, you'll see, it's really, really easy to use. All right, we're going to have Reg use his muscles to show how to use this one. But this, you adjust how fine or how coarse you want it by just turning this little knob. Same thing with this. This goes very, very powder fine, but this one does a great job. It doesn't get quite as fine, but it's great, and it takes about 3 cups to get, or 3 minutes to get a cup of flour with that one.
Okay.
Minute and a half with this, 3 minutes with that.
Okay, let me mention something else now. This really isn't a perfect table we have today for demonstration purposes, so I am using my muscles and my weight and studying it, and I'm doing it. And Vicki wasn't able to do that. I want you to know that up front. Now let's show Vicki using
Well, I
this
was
one.
able to do it, but it was
Not
sliding
near as me,
around.
yeah.
It was sliding around.
So try this one now.
Well, this one's
stand-
sliding around too.
Well, I'll hold it just a little
All
bit.
right.
But it's a lot easier for you, right?
Well, only because they need to be stationary.
Yeah.
This one's really easy, and I normally use that
Yeah.
a lot. Now, I was mentioning to Reg before we started the show that during Y2K, we actually had so many people buy both of these mills. I was amazed. And the reason that they did it is they wanted this one to know that they had something that would always be there, but they wanted something more portable. And because this one you could also get a flaker with. And you can also get a food processor, which I forgot to bring, that
What's
lets you grate and chop and do all kinds of things with it.
Well, one thing I want to mention is, one of the things you need to realize is, we honestly don't have a perfect table setting for this. And so we are doing what we can and need to do to make it work for you. Do you want to be in a situation like that, in an emergency situation, or you want to have something that you know you can put a little extra effort into, a little extra money into, and a lot easier?
Right.
You know, so these are surprises that you find out when it's too late if you're not using this equipment right now.
That's true.
Because you want to find out, like when I got your wheat grinder, I bought the cutting board at Walmart. It had little legs in it, and I drilled 4 holes in it, and I put the nuts and bolts to anchor it, you know. And you'd never seen that before, and you loved it. And eventually I'm going to anchor that to whatever surface I decide I'm going to grind with, and it won't go anywhere.
Right. And you can bolt it right to your table.
Right.
If you want to do that, or your counter.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, this is an easy mill to use, and I had a lot of employees during Y2K who ended up with both of those mills. And I was amazed how many of them told me that they used this one the most. But that was partly because they loved the flaker so much. But it is an easy mill to use. And for those that can't afford this one, it's a really nice option.
Mhm.
But if you can afford this one, that is the route that I would go.
Right.
There is one thing that I will mention on this. Like I say, this has a very, very good warranty on it. And as I mentioned before, children love to play with the grain mills. And I did have a little boy one time playing at an expo, and he pushed down and kind of hung on this and broke this part right here. And so that's one thing that I do encourage people to do. If they're going to get this mill, they ought to buy one extra part, which is only $7, but it's just good insurance.
Okay. Well, let's show them how to use the flaker
Yeah.
next, and we just simply take this off,
Okay.
put it over there.
And actually, the flaker and the mill both come with their own.
Yes.
All right, we're going to add some grain. Now, this flaker is a wonderful thing to use oat groats with. Oat groats are what you grind to get oatmeal, and they're much, much softer than what this wheat is. And with this flaker, you can adjust using these little knobs how thick you want them, how thin you want them, how flat, how big you want them. And you cannot imagine how delicious your oatmeal is when you are grinding that fresh.
Right. A lot of
It
people
is
didn't realize
so
you can
much
do
better.
that. And I didn't know that. I didn't know what a flaker was until I met you.
Well, the nice thing is you will store oat groats for many, many, many years, as opposed to the shorter shelf life that you have with oatmeal. And as we mentioned earlier, you have more nutrition in it. So And you just do the same thing. You just grind it, and you can see that's easy to do.
Let's just pull it out just a hair like that.
Yeah. Just a matter of just turning this little wheel, and within just a very short time, you've got
Fresh.
nice, fresh, absolutely delicious oatmeal. You can, right now we're using wheat. You could do wheat flakes. You could do any of these meals. You can do any of the grains in that you want to do.
Okay. Well, thanks for that part, and we'll show a few recipes next when we come back, like with the flaker and such. So come on back as soon as we're done.
Do you feel a need for more food storage but don't have the usual $2,000 or $3,000 to get it? Do you have the basic foods for survival but want more variety, nutrition, and selection? For a very limited time, you can have 1 year's supply of gourmet food storage delivered to your door for just $500 down and a low monthly payment for the balance. That means you can get all this food now and pay for it in affordable budgeted payments. Call Cooking with Home Storage for the details at 435-835-8283. That's 435-835-8283. Pay $500 now, get the 1 year food supply right now, and make affordable monthly payments for more peace of mind. That's 435-835-8283.
Hello and welcome back to our show. To conclude our show, I've asked Vicki to do a few recipes from her cookbook that we talked about at the beginning of the show. So what are we going to make today, Vicki?
Well, Rich, since you said you wanted something really simple and something different,
Right.
I thought we would do one of the simplest things we possibly could do, but things that you can do a lot with, and that's make some of the Indian fried scones.
Indian fried scones. That sounds good and easy.
That's one of those pioneer recipes that I was talking about that
Okay.
uses very few ingredients and takes a really little amount of time.
Okay, so what do we do first?
Okay, well, first I need your manpower and get you to grind me 3 cups of flour.
Well, fortunately we got about 1 there, so... 2
Okay.
more. Okay, so we have 3 cups of flour measured out in your bowl there. Now what?
Okay, well, we're going to do something more elaborate another time, but we're going to go really simple right now. We've pre-measured the rest of the recipe here, which is just 4 teaspoons of sugar, 4 teaspoons of baking powder, and 2 teaspoons of salt.
Okay.
And so that's what we've got in this little dish, and we'll just add that to the flour. Mix it up well, and you want to mix it well because you don't want to have it too much salt in one area or something, but
Too much baking powder.
that's right. And then we're going to add, we've got 1.5 cups of warm water, and it can vary how much you want to use depending on your flour, how much moisture it's got. A lot of different things can make that vary, so I'm only going to put a small amount in here
See how
to
far that
begin
goes.
with.
You don't want to be
Mhm.
wasting water either. 'Cause
Right.
Water can be a really important commodity in an emergency situation.
Okay, we're going to need a little bit more. Probably going to need the whole thing here. But you just want to make sure that it's nice and moist and has enough consistency that you can work with it. Okay, we're going to use just a little less than the 1.5 cups.
Yeah, you don't have much left over, that's for sure, of the water.
Right. Okay, and this
So
is
it's kind
what
of
we've
like a
got.
Play-Doh,
Yeah,
peanut butter
it's
consistency.
just very easy. Now we're going to shape these into scones. Whoop. You know, I probably added just a little more water than I should
to.
have to that, but it'll be okay. Actually, this is kind of good because if you want to make, these are such a versatile recipe, that's why I chose this one. If you want to make these flatter, you could actually use them almost as a tortilla if you want to do that.
Okay.
But there's several things that you can do with this. Should we fry this
Yeah,
up and
let's
then?
go to our stove next and
Okay.
we'll show what we're going to do.
All right. Okay, we put enough oil in there to go about halfway up on the batter, and now we're just going to put that in and let that cook for a minute. until it's brown on one side, and then we'll turn it over and cook it on the other side. Okay, here's our finished scone. Now you actually can use white flour if you want to with this also, but I really like this recipe, Reg, because it's so easy, and this is wonderful to have with soups or stews. Put butter on it, honey butter on it. There's some wonderful recipes in the cookbook for different types of honey butters. But you can also use this for a couple of other things that I really like. If you want to make them a little bit thicker, cut them in half, use it for sandwich bread. That's very, very quick. Or you can do Navajo tacos with it, and in which case you put beans over it or chili over it, and
Cheese.
some cheese and lettuce and tomatoes if you have them, onions. Yeah, any of that. And it's absolutely wonderful. It's an easy, quick way to do a dinner if you want to do it that way, or to make any kind of bread to go with things, because if you're having soup or chili or something, you generally are going to want something a lot like that with it, and it's quick, easy, and uses very, very few ingredients.
Okay. And now we'll go to our second recipe.
Okay, well, since we're trying to do the really quick and easy stuff to show them that it can be done with their food storage, it doesn't take a lot of work to do some of the things, and because we'll be concentrating more on main dishes later, we're doing a breakfast one right now.
Okay.
That is really easy, and we talked about earlier the importance of having some things that you can do in advance that don't require any cooking.
Okay.
So we are going to make some instant oatmeal packets.
So just like you buy in the store, only you can make it yourself.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, they'll be fresher and they'll be better. I know we're going to be talking about grain mills and flakers in another show.
Right.
So just to mention this so you know what we're looking at here, this is a family flaker. And what you do is you put whole grains in there. What we're using right now is wheat. Normally we'd be using oat groats, but wheat will work the same way, and we'll actually be making, instead of oatmeal packets, wheat packets. So, Reg, if you want to go ahead and grind this up.
So it makes it kind of like what you see in an oatmeal can, little flat
Yes,
flakes.
and you can actually adjust this and make them thicker or thinner. Reg has flaked up some wheat flakes for us, and we've got about 1/4 of a cup in there. And what we're going to do is we're now adding a tablespoon of brown sugar. Okay. And 2 tablespoons of wheat flour. If you were using oats, you'd use 2 tablespoons of oat flour. That just was going to help this hold together. And then we have cut up 2 tablespoons of dehydrated apples. We put that in there, mix it up, and there's a lot of varieties you can use. There's different varieties listed in the cookbook. You can use raisins. You could actually add raisins to this right now if you wanted to. You could add cinnamon to it. But this is the recipe for this one. You can adjust it, do whatever you want.
Get in your practice. That's what this show's all about.
That's right. And then when you're done, this is all there is to it. Put it in a little Ziploc bag or any kind of a covered container. And then when you want to use it, you add 1/2 cup of hot water to it. Let it sit for a few minutes, and then put on your milk, and it is ready to go.
Okay, great. Well, that's it for this episode. I hope that you'll watch all of our episodes. I hope you've learned something of great value. Hope you'll get inspired to get prepared for an emergency situation in the near future. And as I do in every episode, I'd like to take off my hat, and let's not forget to praise the Lord for our many blessings and for the foods that He's given us to help us thrive. And don't forget that you do have a choice. You can survive or you can thrive, just depending on how prepared you want to get. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for watching. You're now better prepared.
Go ahead.
In 3, 2, thank you for watching. You're now better prepared today to be safe tomorrow.